Hello, and welcome to Soul Play. As we come to the final episode of Season 1, I want to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you who has tuned in, shared your thoughts, and supported this podcast along the way. It means the world to me, and I appreciate you. Stay tuned for more details on this at the end of this episode, but for now, our guest today is Emily Sakhila, illustrator, mural artist, skin artist, and the founder of Ink and Earth. Emily is a dear friend and the creator of the beautiful artwork for Soul Play. She draws inspiration from the magic within nature, our human nature, Mother Nature, and the connections between all of existence. She likes to draw the unseen parts of the world, together with the unseen parts of our human minds. Many of her non-commissioned pieces are personal, drawn from riding the waves of this human life, journeying through anxiety, and all the learning and loving in between. In this intimate conversation, Emily delves into her artistic journey, her profound bond with nature, and her struggles with anxiety. We explore her role as a tattoo artist, emphasizing the deep trust and connection inherent in this craft. Our conversation touches on environmental activism, the power of community, and the therapeutic aspects of art and journaling. The episode ends with Emily highlighting the universality of art and creativity, encouraging listeners to embrace their inner artist without fear or judgment. And without further ado, I welcome Emily Sakhila. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sarah. Oh, I love your voice.
Thank you. I've been told that before. That's why one of the many reasons why I wanted to start a podcast. I appreciate that. I also love your voice, and I'm so happy to have you here to showcase your extraordinary humanness and magic. Let's get into it. So at the top of the set, I will have already introduced you to our listeners. But if you don't mind taking a moment to introduce yourself here and let us know why you're here.
Ooh, isn't that funny? I find introductions the hardest bit, to talk about myself and not about art or anything I can hide behind. My name is Emily. My art name's Ink and Earth. I am right now talking to you from beautiful Chiang Mai, our gorgeous home, semi-home. What else would you like to know, love? Why do I exist? Why am I here?
Why are you here, and why are you doing what you're doing? You're such a profound, deep artist.
It was the natural way, there wasn't really much of a question of other paths. It was many different tangents and many different roads, but it was always to feel and to express in some sort for many, many years alongside other jobs. But yeah, it wasn't like I woke up one day and was like, I'm going to be an artist. It's like, no, I was a kid that felt a lot and wanted to paint a lot. And I think paint got put in front of me to keep me focused out of other adventures. Our trouble.
Yeah, and maybe that's where we start, right? That's not everyone's reality. What a gift to be exposed to paint and paper and being out in nature and expressing yourself through that. That is quite a unique experience that you've held on to and now do as your desire, as your love, as your passion for your work.
Yeah, you're so right. I'm so fucking lucky to have grown up with parents that pushed me in front of art. So lucky to grow up with an animal in the house, to have a dog, to
Yes.
have a love for something that's outside the human world. Things like that you kind of take for granted for so long. But it's fuck, that really shaped me so much more than I realized.
Big time. And you had the dog, you had the paper, you had the supportive family. Were you connected to the earth at that time too? Did you grow up in a city? Were you in the woods? Because your art really showcases a lot of beautiful nature in this interconnected web. So I'm curious where that was sparked.
Oh, bless you, love. Yeah, the first city I lived in was Kathmandu. And that was only 11 years ago. So yeah, always in nature, always a little bit more remote. And yeah, always been very, very much an earthbound child when I was growing up. My fears, or what I called the root of fears back then, were all based on something happening to the earth. I was terrified of forest fires, hurricanes, which you don't really get in England, lightning destroying everything. It was all very much like the earth is something powerful, and so powerful that I can be fucking terrified of it as well.
Wise. That's a very accurate perspective if you don't heighten it so much that it cripples you. But it is true. We do live on a magical planet, which is absolutely powerful. And I mean, we're seeing that through natural destruction, right? Like the cycle of life. Humans aren't actually listening to the subtle cues, so they're becoming more extreme, which is something that I'd love to touch on later. But that is, I think, a very unique perspective for a child to hold. Where do you think that came from?
I don't know. I don't know if it's like partly to do with when you're a child, you like your sense of awe and wonder. You don't know where to cap it. It's like, hey, that can just be turned into like so much of an extreme that it's terrifying. Your realities of thought are different then. But yeah, I, as a kid, for as long as I can remember, had severe anxiety. So I grew up learning ways to live with that, to grow through it, to create through it, and how to live with it. And yeah, it's quite hard to describe right now because I haven't had what I used to call anxiety or a period of anxiousness for a long time, for close to a year now, which I've never been able to say. I'm also really like careful of how I frame it, because as soon as I say I don't have anxiety anymore, it creates this barrier. It's almost like it's tempting it to come back. As soon as I say, you're not allowed back, you know, then it's going to creep up. This little fear monster is going to be on my shoulder. Wait, what? You think I've gone? You think I've gone, bitch? And then start like sneaking back in. So I'm trying to be really careful with the language that I speak about it to myself. It makes such a difference.
Your language is reality, ultimately, right? What is reality but what we say? And I think through your poetry and your writing, there's so much weight that holds on to that. I respect you for being so authentic and honest in your experience with anxiety. And I think it is, from what I can gather, quite a global, universal experience, sure, on a varying degree level. Some experience it more intensely and perhaps more mildly. But I think we can all resonate with what it feels like to be nervous, to be anxious, to be uncomfortable, to feel wrong or out of sorts in an experience, if we are in fact grounded enough in our body to notice that. And so what's changed in the last year for you? It sounds like quite a profound transformation to step away from a time where perhaps anxiety was a bit higher, it sounds like, and has been diminishing. What's going on there?
Yeah, it's weird, huh? As the world sets
I'm like,
on
tell
fire.
Tell us the secrets, you know?
Like the world's getting more intense, more unknown, a little bit hotter, a little bit more chaotic. And my anxiety is definitely coming with more ease. I've been trying to think about this lately. Like, is it one big thing? Is it me growing through it? Is it the art of not giving a fuck anymore? And you're like, whatever, let it come, bring it. I think it's a combination of things. And so I've tried everything in the past, like everything.
What does that look like? Please, if you could elaborate.
Oh, a long list. All right. So when I was a kid, they didn't call it anxiety. It was called, I always said I had phobias. And they were like, she's scared of, and listed everything. And I'm like, wait, you're going to put the ceiling on this? The ceiling falling on my head? I remember one of like being terrified, like always really claustrophobic. I had to find a way out of everything. But really intense, you know, I wouldn't go into certain buildings. This was up until I was like in my early 20s. Anyway, yeah, I'm getting off point. I'm caffeinated. I can drink coffee now, which is a celebration. Like coffee and anxiety, they're not, well, they are best friends for sure. The joy of having a coffee. Oh my God. But yeah, my mouth runs away with itself. So yeah, like tried everything from flower remedies, which actually helped quite a bit as a kid. Meditation, before I knew what it was, of just going and sitting with myself. I needed to be on my own a lot when I was feeling that, and would just sit and like stare at a wall. Not call it meditation when I'm like a tiny kid, you know, but I needed that. I needed to just be and sit and then sort of like be able to analyze what was going on. Yeah, I tried the natural ways, tried like doctor, more traditional ways. For sure, journaling and art has always helped. I don't know a life without it, so I can't really say how impactful that is.
A level of processing
exactly
occurs there.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's how we process the thoughts, how we work out like where the feeling has come from thought, where it is in the body, how we either in the moment of anxiety, how we find anything to heal that through like shaking, through movement or whatever, or through stillness. And then it's the sort of aftermath of like, why did I go that way? What happened here? Be it through talk therapy, hypnotherapy. I had a bad hypnotherapy experience as a kid, and then more recently, the best with this wonderful therapist in Chiang Mai, May, who...
I've heard of May. Yeah.
Almost everyone knows.
Her phenomenal work,
Wow.
yes. Shout out to May, and shout out to all the healers who are really changing people's lives, handing the baton of power back to people, providing them with a toolkit to know that you have everything you need within yourself. We just need to be reminded of that, right? And even that child, you know, what you mentioned earlier, you had the innate wisdom to go into a space and sit down and take care of yourself and separate from the madness that was the outside world, right? So it sounds like journaling and art has been a continuation and just an extension of your existence here on Earth.
I love how you talk about the baton of power, you know, like so much of my anxiety ended with the end of my 8-year relationship. And he's incredible. He's a wonderful person and helped me so much through anxious times. But there was something about nothing to do with him, probably my attachment and my feeling that I needed someone outside myself to help. As soon as that was sort of taken away, I was like, well, I gotta get on with it, you know? When your crutch is gone, you gotta fucking learn to walk or you lie down. And another thing that I'm so fucking lucky for is our wonderful community of friends and family.
Yes.
Like here, like we
Chosen
are so
family.
lucky.
Chosen family.
Yeah.
I would agree. As we've mentioned on the podcast before, you know, there is a beautiful, supportive, artistic community here in Chiang Mai that is just endlessly supportive, wanting everyone to shine, which is very significant and seemingly rare. You know, there's a lot of separation and isolation and a lot of this going on in the world. And to be in such a wholesome, connected container is quite a gift, you know, and we're sitting in a beautiful art space with Emily's art here for those who are watching. So if we can get into your writings a little bit and perhaps you can connect how, like, why is it that you choose to write about these things? Because there are undertones to your writings, these earth-loving stories, as you call them. And from my readings, because I've been following you for quite some time now, is this interconnectedness. There's many themes of love, allowance, our wild nature, and how precious this life is. So if you can speak to some degree, a little bit more in depth about your writing. Like, these are all very expansive things that we just mentioned. Love, interconnectedness, allowance, life, and the preciousness of that. And so if we are in that realm, it's quite counter to be in the realm of a cyclical thought pattern that's doing us a disservice, which would be associated to anxiety or these maladaptive patterns that we all have, right? We all are programs and we're learning to unlearn things that don't serve us anymore. So would you say that there's a correlation between writing so deeply about these forms of things and your process with mental health?
Oh, you're good at your questions, love. It's so difficult, you know, to look at my art and my work as a viewer and see it as like an overview with another perspective. So it's really nice to hear you describe what you see. Like, for me, it's mainly, lately anyway, the last few years, it's been like conversations with me in the sea. I say I talk to the sea. I'm talking to myself. I'm talking to...
I mean, we are the sea when you're in those kind of flow states, right? Like, let's get into it. The interconnectedness, separation, when we're flowing so deeply is a bit of an illusion. And I mean, I think you write heavily about that topic.
Yeah, massively. I think a lot of it can come out so easily in the sea as well, because you don't have a sketchbook out there. You don't have your phone. You don't have like an iPad to draw and attach to the bottom of a surfboard. Also the days that like I'm just floating in the water as well. It's the water immersion. Surfing has the other side of like challenging your fears, or my fears anyway. But like when you're there and you don't have a chance to record it, you're just talking, you're just experiencing it, you're just living it. And I think that's what creates it all. And then it comes from the reflection And no pressure to create. You're just playing. You're so in the moment. As soon as you're sucked into a moment like that, like, you know, it's a deep presence. It's
soul play, one could say.
Oh, nice one. Yeah, deep awareness, appreciation, all of it. God, I get so soppy talking about the ocean. I definitely felt it in the mountains as well, though. Anything when you're at the mercy of nature like that, you realize your perspective, your place in the world is much smaller, much more insignificant than we like to give ourselves.
Yeah, or that's like designed in our program to think that me, identifying with this rigid form of who we are, right? Which doesn't need to be. When we can let go of those shackles and those stories, there is more opportunity, I think, for soul play, for flow, for feeling connected, for trusting in the process. And you sound generally quite connected to this realm and this planet since early days, with your discussion of when the earth is suffering, you know, you witness a fire or this or that, when things are dying, you know, in front of you, it's profoundly impactful, it's painful, it's how do you cope? And I think this might be an opportunity to move into the ecological crisis, right? You're a huge activist in this. You have a platform on Instagram with 50-some thousand followers, and I've seen time and time again that you're putting out requests for your followers to send money to conservation rights. And I respect and admire that so much, because we are at quite a crossroad and we do need to wake up. And as mentioned earlier, there's been subtle cues over and over and over again, and now not so subtle, right? And so if you could offer our listeners a bit of insight into your experience, yes, this is happening. And yes, we do need to have a level of surrender and allowance to, we can't change and edit the world into a peaceful utopia where everything is shining and glowing. And
yeah, true. But we can't let fear sort of trap us into hopelessness and stagnation and just, there's nothing I can do. Is a like dangerous place to be for the world, but for ourselves as well, to give all our power and strength away. But it's very hard to see what we can do locally a lot of the time. And yeah, it's the all we can really do. I mean, unless you're working and giving a lot of time to trying to change like government decisions, which I admire the people and my friends who do so much. More so it's on the local. And like recently walking the beaches in rainy season, it's pretty hard trash collecting and not seeing the global picture. Like in the Western world, you know, we're brought up with such a global perspective, whereas here, one thing I love about the Thai culture is the difference. You're there to look after your like community, your local, your friends, your family.
Collective rather than individual.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when it comes to environmental issues, like a lot more is possible when you look at the collective.
Absolutely. Strength in numbers.
For sure. But even like picking up trash on the beach, you know, I'm not going to clean this whole 2-kilometer beach and my bag is full after 10 meters. But still, like, stop thinking about everything. You're not going to fix fucking everything. Same, I guess, with your own mental health. Don't try and get rid of all the fear, you know, or all the depression. Just see what you can do each day to lift yourself up a little bit. To pick out a bit of trash from the mind, you know?
Yeah, because it gets weighed down and heavy. And then it's very common for that helplessness, hopelessness to set in. But it's a downward spiral from there. And I know that both of us have been in those spaces. And I appreciate you taking the time to bring a voice to this reality that has become common. Thank you for these helpful tips. I hear you, and it's so valuable to hear another perspective, and there's no one size fits all, but I think these ideas to remember that every action we take is significant. Sure, we can't change the world drastically, but every little bit that we do is significant in this. And even from an energetic perspective, a big driving force for me to start this podcast was really trying to bring in some play, to bring in some creativity, curiosity, allow people to become a bit more alive and awake, right, in this precious life that we're living. And so even energetically, right, if we can show up in our power, show up in our essence, and really learn through community, through art, journaling, landing in ourselves, whether it's with a therapist or with a coach, taking the time to create a relationship with ourselves. And the more we can be connected to ourselves, that then translates to being connected to the earth, to this beautiful planet, to every single being on it. And then that lens really provides hope, because there is so much life. Yes, the planet is on fire, through one lens. Through another, we can really see that there is magical life. The process is continuing.
Yeah, I mean, like I do, deep down, I do believe that the environmental crisis comes from a individual loss of spirit, which ripples out, to wider communities and nations and who we have then controlling them. Yeah, if this all changed on top and individual, then things would be very different now. But yeah, trying to not look at like the global extremist view and just focus on what you can do with what you have, like when you can, instead of being washed into the intensity of the global waves of fire at the moment.
Yes.
But yeah, I love what you're expressing with this podcast. You're bringing all the joy and the play and the beautiful community we have here to the outer world. And
making global community. And I also want to share that it's beautiful to step into play. It's beautiful to step into curiosity. But I think what we're doing here is we're meeting pain. We're meeting despair. We're meeting reality. And I think that is where the magic happens. Of course, there's beauty and there's bliss. But, we've cried together. We've held each other through a lot of things. And that's also what I want to bring to the table through Soul Play, right? Is really allowing people to show up authentically. And I think, as you mentioned, with people losing sight of their own spiritual path, so then if we're not connected to ourselves, of course we're not connected to the planet. So it's if we can spark that with a little bit of play, sure, but that will then awaken all emotions, right? Rather than this, we need to gravitate to good and amazing and joyful and no, we need to gravitate to whatever is coming alive in us,
Can I ask you a question, love?
Only one.
All right, just one. Do you believe you can, I know it's hard to name the opposite, but do you believe you can have like love without fully knowing fear, or you can have joy without fully seeing what sadness can hold? Do you believe that there needs to be the both, and see and know both to really feel the full extent of the other?
Wow. One question and you're hitting me with this, hey? Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I think ultimately our human experiences are so subjective and individual. What comes with that is a sense of collectivity, the more and more we release from these shackles of identifying with form, thickly identifying with, I am Sarah Benoit, I am this, I am. Because what comes with that is a rigidity and a stagnation. You stay within that story. The more and more throughout my life that I've stepped away from stories that were not even written by me, the more I've stepped away, the more I have touched places that consciously I probably wouldn't want to go back there. They've been very dark and painful, and what you could call an extreme version of terror and pain. And as the pendulum swings, extreme versions of joy and magic. In my own experience, which is all I can really attest to, is I didn't feel anything until I could feel everything, Wow. And I wrote a song about this. And so in my experience, I didn't allow sadness in, so I could not personally experience joy. So that was an extreme version of quite a dissociative child that was in survival mode, which I thank and appreciate. It's a nervous system. It's a regulating thing. We're trying to survive. It is what it is. But when we can wake up to where we are at in this space-time continuum that we call planet Earth, with the Gregorian calendar talking about time, if we can really step into this moment, this piece of time, and really, what am I feeling in my body? What are the thoughts that are occurring in my mind in this moment? you know? If I can land in that, the more I lean into sadness, yes, the more at a later date I can experience extreme bliss. And I think this is an interesting question because I grapple with this often. I'll get into flow states with music and deep connection and beautiful, authentic realms of relating and like non-judgment, where I do start to, Sarah Benoit, start to kind of leave, but not in a dissociative way, but in a more going back home to a collective, a sense of union. Does that resonate? Does that answer your question? I don't know.
Totally. Oh my God, your answer.
No more questions. We're coming back.
Wow. That was beautiful, darling.
Thank you for allowing the time to even reflect on that thought. And, you know, I think it's a beautiful opportunity to really send to our listeners, like, what are your thoughts on this? We're all here on planet Earth. I would love to hear from everyone that feels called to really share their answers to this really thought-provoking question.
I love how you link it to feeling it all, the importance of that. And one thing that's really helped me with anxiety in the last, I say lately, but I mean in the last 2 or 3 years, is the realization for me, anxiety is very different person to person, felt differently in the body, definitely in the mind.
We are all unique individual beings. It's just so beautiful to showcase someone's experience because there's a potential for solidarity in that experience. Like, oh, I could never articulate what I feel, but this actually resonates, what you're saying. Or like, oh, I appreciate your perspective. That's not my experience, you know, and everything is welcome.
That's it. That's the key thing. So with anxiety, just saying like everything is welcome and getting rid of any suppression. As soon as anything is suppressed, and as soon as I put myself in a headspace where I tell myself to suppress anything, then it starts like not feeling great, you know. Even if I start telling myself in this room we're in and recording, there's 10 bolts on the door, I can't leave. I can't leave until we've recorded the best fucking podcast in the world. All of this, you know, you're putting so much fucking pressure. And if I say, I can't be sad right now, I've got to hold my shit together, sadness is gonna like want to crawl up.
Absolutely.
Maybe I have a contrary mind.
I mean, I personally resonate and I feel that resistance is futile, period. If we allow emotions, thoughts, feelings to come to the party and not be told to get out, like our whole childhood, whatever the individual story for,
don't cry,
you know,
don't cry, don't cry.
Yeah, don't cry, don't feel anger, don't do this, don't do that. A part of, I think, why I'm here, why we're here as a collective of humans is to remember that we're here to reparent ourselves. So yes, allow everything. And that's very challenging in a fast-paced modern life, you know, where you're working 9 to 5 and you have children and you're upholding a relationship and your friendships and all the other behind the scenes.
There's sometimes we can't. I mean, like,
of course,
logistically, it's quite hard to sometimes express. What I've started doing that helps me when I've got a really busy work week or life week or whatever is just allowing the time, be like, all right, Sunday afternoon, that's my time for like fully expressing. I'll go and I schedule the time for like, I'm gonna go scream underwater. I'm gonna go like dance in the trees. I'm gonna go stamp it out or whatever, you know?
Yes.
And just by like being like, look, I've got that expressive, let go, full force time. Just to know it's there makes everything feel like, well, I've got the time, I can do it. Even if it's in the future, it's nearby.
Yes. A release.
Yeah. And just being like, look, I see these emotions in my head right now, or I see it in my body, and you will have time to come out and express yourself.
Yes. And acknowledging, and even if it's a conversation exactly like that, it's a great tip, right? Like, I see you. I am busy and I have this, that, and the other thing to do, but setting aside an hour within the next week, even 1 hour within the next week to really sit in that, land in that. How does that feel in your body? How does that feel in your mind?
Often it then doesn't come, you know? If I'm like, all right, this is my scheduled time for screaming the fuck out. And I get there and I'm like, I'm feeling great because nothing was suppressed. I knew that it could come. I'm not going to scream underwater today. I'm going to stay above water and surf these waves. But yeah, it's just the allowing it now.
Yeah, it's a big theme for sure. And so we've talked a lot about poetry and writing here today, but a very big part of your work is visual arts. So both on paper, on skin. You've been a tattoo artist for quite some time. So if you could get into that experience, what that looks like for you, the process, and really showcasing individual stories on people's
oh my God,
bodies, right? Permanently. It's such a big deal.
Yeah, I'm it's always an honor to tattoo someone. Like always. I've tattooed you.
Yes, you have.
So yeah, like sharing
my
this
magical
with you.
back piece.
That was a special one for me.
Yeah, such a journey.
There's something special in all of them. Like to be trusted with someone's skin suit, you know? And to be trusted to like put a visual representation of their story. It never stops being so special. This year is my 10th year of learning and continuing to learn. Every skin is different, every human's different. You never master it, you never completely learn it. And that's like one of the dream vocations, you know, for me anyway, to process Earth School. Yeah, I'm super lucky with all my clients are awesome, all of them. And yeah, people often ask me, like, tell me horror stories, tell me, like, all the challenges and shit. And I've had some wacky requests, for sure, for tattoos. And some wonderfully wacky individuals. But there's never been a time that I'm like, oh, why the fuck am I doing this? What's going on?
What do you think contributes to that? Because coming from a perspective of what really screams out to me is energetic. So it's like, if people are met with a raw sense of authenticity and welcoming, then oftentimes people perhaps feel safe to kind of land in that, right? As opposed to if there was a tattoo artist that was like all business, no connection, maybe it does put people's guards up a little bit more of like, oh no, I want this. And like awakening those inner child parts that become a bit defensive and less able to connect. Does that resonate in any way?
Oh, totally, love. Like, I mean, there's something fascinating in every human. Right?
Always.
Every
magic.
human.
We're magical beings.
Yeah.
Let's say that
All of
again.
it.
Every
we
human.
Are fucking magical beings.
Absolutely.
Am I allowed to swear?
Well, it's a little late now. Let's run. No, of course, babe.
Yeah, so there's something fascinating in every human. And when it comes to like connecting with someone, that's all it is. It's communicating and connecting. And you ask the right questions. Not just the questions, but you create an environment where someone feels comfortable to talk, you know, or knows that they can. Some people share full-on life stories, and I will never repeat them without like consent or the person right there. Even if someone said like it's fine to share right now, I'm on a podcast, so like I don't really want to talk about specific memorial tattoos or like the ups and downs and everything you can imagine life giving out, but
the full spectrum.
Exactly. And some of them are like that, but sometimes it's someone wants a small visual reminder. It's just to remember, say, a travel that they're on right there, and then where they found like happiness and joy again, or something like that. Like it's just as important in a way, you know. And yeah, as soon as I tattoo someone, you naturally connect. You're going under their skin. You're literally getting under their skin. Like, I mean, there's a saying for that, no? And I feel, you get to this friendship level really quick with someone.
A bit relatable, perhaps, like as a previous labor and delivery nurse for like a decade in Canada, you meet women in very vulnerable moments, right? Where you're there acting as a co-learner, of course, but also like a bit of a guide. Okay, like you will be the person putting ink on their bodies. We're supportive anchors in that. They're coming in, there's fear, there's unknown, there's perhaps an inner critic or an active mind going on. And so meeting those parts with a calmness, a security, a sense of knowing that everything will be okay, and creating a container that is safe, trusting, and so much opportunity for vulnerability and for just showing up in your true, raw, authentic nature, which we don't tend to see as much always in the day-to-day, but then you get plopped into a tattooing space, and it's normal for people to have fears, right? There's also that sense of permanency with tattoos, which like I obviously have many tattoos, and I look at our bodies as a canvas, and it's gorgeous and beautiful, but the stories that have been implemented into our program sometimes are counter to that. So you have fears coming up. Would you say that that's true?
Totally. A lot of people have fears of like walking into a tattoo studio as well. The environment, so when I was growing up, like the majority of tattoo studios in England were created a very hostile environment.
Could you shed some light on the background?
Like the difference between Asia and Thailand tattoos and England, specifically hand poke. Hand poke there was seen as something, and came from sailors and prisoners and that kind of environment, whereas here it was practiced by the monks. It was a blessing, it was a protection charm, a yan, and treated in a very different way, you know?
Big time. Different stories.
Very different. And yeah, like the tattoo culture in England, it's changing rapidly. It's wonderful. It's a lot more inclusive. Across Europe, actually, there's now a lot more safe spaces and a lot more tattoo studios that make a real focus on the environment. So people walk in and they feel okay. So it's not all down to just the communication from the artist beforehand, but when you arrive, you know, you're welcomed. I don't know, when I was younger, like going into tattoo studios or going with a friend or getting your ears pierced or whatever, it was a threatening place. It was, you didn't want to be in there. And the person doing it would just be doing their job of hurting you.
Yes, and also the space that you're describing sounds like an inability to really express truth. So for example, if I'm in that tattoo parlor getting a tattoo and I'm experiencing pain or discomfort.
Oh, suppress it.
Suppress it, right?
Yeah.
So what a beautiful evolution that it sounds like it is going in the direction of allowance. What I really appreciate about tattoos, and you know, I've seen this in your writing, how you mentioned that every piece holds an essence from the time of creation.
That's what a tattoo is, yeah.
Exactly. But you think of like the alternate realities where people were in that space where they're fearful, they're uncomfortable, they're suppressing their emotions. And it's okay. It is what it is. But it's also just beautiful. Like that's not been my experience receiving tattoos. Because I've got one from you and then from other dear friends who hold this more progressive notion to allow people to be people and to show up in their truth, right? Yeah, because I mean, that's such a profound statement. Yes, this piece of art is on my back for the rest of time, as I will be here on this earth as Sarah Benoit, but there is a sense of delivery in that remains like that moment where it was born.
It holds that moment, for sure. Until I had quite a few tattoos, I would always forget that the tattoo is not so much about the aesthetic, like of, hey, I've got a flower on me here. But maybe this is just personally subjective, but like what I would see was where I was at that time. Like I look back at like the one on me here on my friend's couch when I just got here like 10 years ago. And I thought this would mark the journey I was trying to describe that was really poignant at the time. But no, it's like, it's just that moment. It's who I was then, who I was in that, like, that space on the couch, you know?
A blip of time.
Yeah. And all of these are like little time capsules, you know? Which, yeah, I didn't really consider until I was tattooed. Yeah, like going back to the environment and the suppression, I think one thing that I really enjoyed about being tattooed here when I first got here, and I couldn't speak any Thai and often went to this wonderful tattooist, but he doesn't speak English. It would all be in silence. And I've got 2 pieces from him that were both 15 hours, and like the 2 sessions for each. The silence allowed so much freedom, so much thought, so much chance to just relax, you know? Before I tattoo someone now, most of the time, I like to adapt depending on who's there, especially if it's a first tattoo. Because in a first tattoo, someone's thoughts are usually running away without the reality. I like to start quicker than most, but I always allow a space of just silence. Like it's not necessarily like sitting meditation, you know, it's welcome, but it's just to allow both of us to not be afraid to have moments of not talking. We're so used to filling time with everything. Space with everything. I mean, we're doing this right now.
Sure, intentionally.
Should we just do a 30 minutes?
Should we take a little pause? And please welcome a pause, you know, if you want to pause now and really sit in stillness, in silence, in non-distraction, right? We live in such a stimulating world where we're getting like hits, quick fixes, whether it's through social media or consumerism, ordering, coffee. And again, it's all okay. It's just remembering that we are animals and we do need to come back to our nature, which does include stillness. So thank you for speaking to that. That's another interesting topic, witnessing the evolution of being. We're discussing the tattoo scene 2, 3, 4 decades ago. Of course it's evolving. Everything is evolving, and you don't know what you don't know. I grew up in an environment where we didn't talk about emotions. That was status quo. That's normal, right? And what are people trying to do? They're trying to be normal, right? They're grasping for normalcy. But it's beautiful to wake up to the idea that that could be a trap.
Normal is a trap.
It's a myth. Yeah. It's a myth, you know?
We do need to allow more space for silence in, though. Yeah. Aesthetically, artwork-wise, I used to draw full detail. Each page, each sketchbook page. I remember going out into the world with my sketchbook, 23. And each page would take me 20 hours, full detail.
How big is this page, babe?
Oh, 20 it was 20 centimeters square sketchbook. I always went for the square
But
ones.
a lot of detail, a lot of attention to detail.
Crazy amounts. And I'm not sure if that reflected the amount of noise in my mind or whether it was vice versa. It was the opposite. When my mind is chaotic, I crave to look at more minimalistic art. When my mind is maybe wanting a bit of excitement or quick fix things, maybe more detail is fun.
I think it's coming back to this innate drive to come back to balance. And again, remembering that baton of power, we do know what we need.
Deep down, always.
Yes. Under how many layers? I mean, let's get into how many layers. Many, many, many layers.
That fucking onion. Mental health onion of the mind.
Peeling and crying and peeling. There's many layers, but we do know.
Cutting and smashing and putting a metal spoon in your mouth, hoping for the best. Stop crying. Yeah, we do know deep down. But got to experience it all to find it, right?
And I think the magic of art and creative expression is that we can go into that vortex of experience. You know, it's not so intellectual. Sure, you could be processing an experience or a challenging time, but you can get into it, actually experience it for yourself rather than intellectualize something and claiming that we know. And I've done that time and time again, and I continue to find myself oh, I didn't learn that lesson quite yet. And that's okay too. Everything's okay. Seems like a good place to be coming to a close here. But before we do, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to bring to light?
Ooh. Yeah, I think one thing to add is bless you, you call me an artist, and I call you an artist for sure. And it took me a long time to accept that as a word or a label. And come to describe that recently as more everyone is a fucking artist. All of life can be art. And I think there's often a huge fear of expressing yourself if you don't believe yourself to be an artist or good at something, especially for, I'm 34, so I still grew up without social media and expressing myself outwardly for a long time, and graduated art school and was making art before putting it on social media for a long time. Thank fuck. And thank fuck for social media as well. Without that, I wouldn't have the freedom to work this way now. I appreciate both, and I really appreciate the time that I had without it, to not live in a world of judgment. My first bunch of sketchbooks, I ripped pages out and gave them away, or I would draw and I'd lose them, or I'd go out and I remember my bag got stolen with a 2-year-old sketchbook in it, you know? I'm
a lot of practices and letting go of attachments.
Also letting go of what what I'm trying to say is like, you can express yourself and create even if you don't call yourself an artist and don't feel the need to share it, show it, make it look nice. The first page of a sketchbook I usually scribble all over, make ugly.
That's great advice.
So there's no, like, it doesn't have to be a certain way. You don't have to be normal.
Yes.
You don't have to make it beautiful. It's just a tool of getting the thoughts out, the feelings out, like working out how it goes. I'm trying to share more of like art that goes wrong. I do that in quotes because like, yeah, what's wrong?
There's no wrong art.
But like the imperfections.
Thank you so much for bringing this to our attention, because it is so important, right? There may be some listeners that don't resonate with that term, artist. And like similar to you, there was mad imposter syndrome, let me tell you, to like call myself a musician, call myself this. And they're all, again, just, in case you guys haven't noticed, I'm big on not assigning ourselves to boxes and stories, right?
Same.
Yeah. So remembering that we don't have to be anything. We don't have to label ourselves as anything. And although it perhaps doesn't resonate because you haven't practiced that skill, you haven't put like pen or pencil to paper. So there's perhaps some avoidance from that alone, because if we're not good at something immediately, as a guitar teacher, I've really experienced this, or any form of teaching, right? When people pick something up new, like the guitar, for example, they expect to be Led Zeppelin within weeks, you know? And it's like, I hate to be the humble truth here that we've all taken so much time and energy and devotion to our arts, right? And it's never too late to start. And even if it stays in your dresser next to your bed, never to be seen by anyone, the benefits of putting these thoughts, processing things outside of the confines of our mind, you know, and to really process them through words and images and color and drawing, and knowing that there are no rules, there is no right or wrong. That, I think, does something to our psyche, our minds. Like, it allows us for a reset that, like, oh, this wasn't true. Yesterday, I believed that I couldn't do that, and now I can. So it just opens up a new avenue for, well, what else was not true yesterday and is different today, right? Like, we're constantly dying and being born again. All these old versions of ourselves that are holding us, that are keeping us small.
Yeah, child mind, so healthy. Beginner mind, and like play. Again, that comes down to play. Adults need to play more.
Yeah, I think like there's been quotes that have talked about this, and I will not be repeating it verbatim by any means, but as children, we learn to be adults. And as adults, we really need to learn to be children. Untamed children, without rules, just like absolutely natural. And, you know, you look at a baby and they cry. What's going on? They have a biological need that's not met. Let's land into some of our needs that aren't met. And again, it's going to be challenging, and it's new. So it's like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? I think remembering that we don't have a textbook for life. For many years of my life, I'm like, everyone else has this textbook. Everyone.
You know, you're just describing surfing in the most beautiful way right now. Like everything.
Wow.
Like
okay. I don't surf, so
It sounds like you do, you know?
I surf the waves of life, let me tell you. Yeah.
It's all about play, all about like, the only purpose of it is enjoying it. There's no need to ride the water wave. There's no need to do it. It's just to enjoy it, just to play with your body, with the world. And it takes a fucking long time to learn.
Yes. I think surrendering to that reality has personally also diminished my anxiety or unsettling nature of the mind. Yeah. We will never know everything, period.
Not at all.
Ever.
I might not ever be able to play this flute that I love so dearly.
Ooh, you want to bring it out for a little number?
Oh, shall I illustrate? Yeah. Like learning something that
I would appreciate that deeply, actually. Okay. I love you so much, Emily. Thank you.
I love the flute is right here. That's actually as good as it gets. Sometimes there's like a lot of squeaks and
Beautiful.
things. But yeah, for breath work, I love this thing.
I'm just hearing magic. Good for you for being brave, for picking up an instrument at 34. I'm really excited to continue witnessing the evolution of this, and I appreciate your time with us here today.
I'm excited to surf with you, love.
Ooh, you asking me questions, taking me surfing. Who do you think you are, Emily? I love you.
Can I add one thing that I've absolutely adored about this podcast? That when it's not recording, Sarah says, I love you all the time. And it's the most beautiful way to treat someone, you know. That's how you treat someone, like behind the scenes, for no one to know. You just make people feel loved and comfortable in everything you do. I love you so much.
I love you infinitely.
Now it's on camera.
Yeah, I'm like, ooh.
What else can I say about you behind the scenes?
That's enough. Okay, we got one last question. Where can people find you in the world?
I'm usually between Asia and Europe and sometimes other spots, but I keep it all updated when I know online on Instagram, ink.and.earth. Or my website, inkandearthstore.com. And even better than that is my newsletter, which I really enjoy as a way to keep in touch with people who want to be there, you know, and don't have to be on social media all the time for an update. Mm. You know, you might want to just go off for a week, but then, you know, you open your inbox and can still stay in touch. And that is, on my website, inkandearthstore.com. There's a newsletter sign up.
Beautiful. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for creating this beautiful artistic community and for sharing ink stories and being you.
Thank you, love, for widening like the community, our circles, for all the magic you bring me and everyone. And can't wait to celebrate this day and solstice with you. Oh wait, do I have to cut that out? Fuck.
That's
one
perfect.
Fuck up.
It's
one
perfect.
fuck up.
It's perfect. Oh, yay! Season 1. That's a wrap. Can you believe it? And maybe you caught Emily's little slip. Yes, this episode was recorded back in 2023 during the summer solstice. But here we are in the present moment as I speak to you, overflowing with love and gratitude for each and every one of you. It's been an incredible journey, and I'm beyond excited to share that I'm almost done recording season 2. But before we dive into the new season, I'll be taking a short break. And in the coming weeks, I will release a solo episode, which delves a bit further into my own personal journey, the birth of soul play, as well as what's in store for season 2. So stay tuned for that. I can't wait to continue this journey with you. Appreciate the love and support. See you back here soon.